My fellow deep thinkers, welcome to Deeper Meaning Time. Today is Thinker Series Episode 5, and I'm going to leave you guys with a short thing to think about today. And I'm going to start with just a question. How do you think that you think? It's a simple question. Do you think this way or do you think that way? How do you think? And so today, I asked you to spend the time and just consider it is that how you actually come to conclusions and why you come to the conclusions. And is it because of the exact thoughts that you're having? Is it the way you are thinking of those thoughts? Are you a type of person that's very analytical? Are you a type of person that is just quick to figure out a solution? Well, this is something that I am super intrigued by. I read in a book. It's called it's called Reality Is Not What It Seems. It's by Carlo Rovelli, and it's a really, really good book. I highly suggest if you're into science stuff, you read about it. It has basically the whole first part of the book talks about ancient Greek and ancient Greek philosophy and stuff like that, and it points out something that I had never ever thought about until the moment I read it. And the Greeks actually, back when they existed, back in ancient Greece, philosophers and really just all people back then. I don't really know quite yet. I haven't really thought about hard enough what it is that's changed, but back then, people thought along a completely different thought process than one of which we use today. And basically, there's three schools of thought. The first school of thought is deduction, and so when you consider things, you're basically deducing them down to the smallest possible, like the easiest. Well, it's called deduction. So yeah, that's it. You're just deducing the problem down to a simpler form so you can to figure it out, basically. So there's deduction, there's induction, and induction is basically considering how what actually is going on. It's where you think about the properties of what's happening. And then there's retroduction, which retroduction is basically, it's wisdom in a sense. It's the birth of wisdom. It's what true wisdom is being able to think retroductively. And the way that Carlo Rovelli points it out in his book and uses his example it's so perfect. And it might have been even that one of the Greek philosophers used it as an example. I'm not sure, but I'd have to go back and read it again to know. But basically, the school of thought, the retroduction school of thought, it's a lost art, and definitely scholars of the past, they know this, and they know how retroduction works, and they understand how to use it. And it is a lost art form when you really think about it, and when you consider how it is we talk in our everyday lives and how we think, and basically retroduction is what I love. It's common sense, it's logic, and it's simplicity. It's the most efficient and the quickest outcome, basically, when you're thinking. And so the analogy or example, I guess, is a haystack. There's a needle in a haystack. We've all heard this analogy before, or whatever you want to call it. And so the Greek philosophers, ancient Greeks, when you would ask them, there's a needle in a haystack and I need you to find it, they don't just go looking for the needle. They would consider one of the three schools of thought to figure out where the needle is. And so with deduction, you would consider basically that Basically, deduction is taking what other people say or just other things that you've heard and know. And with the haystack example, it would be as though you're looking through the haystack for the needle, and someone pokes their head in and goes, "Hey, I saw it over there," and just points, and so you go looking in that general direction. And so you're just deducting all the possibilities, basically, is what you're doing with deduction. And so with induction, you're taking the needle and you're thinking about it. You're like, okay, the needle weighs X, and hay must weigh X. So the needle dropped from the top could only far so far to the bottom because of the hay and because of the weight of the needle. So induction is a good way to think, in my opinion. It is leaning more towards a logical thought process, but it's not as simple as it could be. And so when you move to retroduction and you're in that haystack looking for the needle, someone who uses the retroduction school of thought is basically going to decide that, hey, I've used deduction and induction, neither of which have got me anywhere. So now I'm going to think backwards. And you think back literally to the beginning. I mean, and it's hard to even put this into words. You think about the objects before they were the needle in the haystack. Before that, they were just needle, and it was just haystack. So then you consider each item. There's hay, and then there's a metal needle. The needle is metal. So if you're looking for a needle in a haystack, hay, let's just burn the hay down. Hay catches fire pretty easy, and that needle's going to need to be really hot to melt. So it's going to be really easy to be able to find the needle just by burning down the haystack. It's the simplest, most common sense answer that you could possibly give. The most common sense thing you could do to find the needle in the haystack is just burn down the pile. It's so smart. It's so genius. And then for us to not use that anymore as a school of thought in our everyday lives, that is so wrong. That is such a problem because life is simple. Mother Nature is simple. And especially Mother Nature. Mother Nature is so simple. And she wants us to figure her out. She wants us to understand her and to know how she works. And she's simple, and that's what she's trying to push across with simplicity. I mean, it's not that hard to think about how I've brought up in my other episodes. Gravity not being gravity. It's simpler than that. It's just magnetism. Or it's just adhesive. Something simple, something we haven't thought of yet. But that is the point, though. The point is that when you use common sense and you use logic and you use simplicity and efficiency in your thought processes, you'll come to the best answer. And to me, having that answer and stemming from all of that, you could achieve so much. You could become a philosopher that is just like the ancient Greeks. The fact that if we just took more time to look at something in a simpler light. But we don't even, that's the problem though. We don't even think. We just do. We do, and we let people and we let the internet and we let other people decide things for us. And half of us can't even choose what we want to get for dinner. How is it we're going to use retroductive thinking when we can't even consider what we want for dinner? Where have we lost it? Why have we lost it? And will we get it back? I say yes. I say we will get it back. But it's going to start with people like us talking about it and realizing that no longer are we smart. We act so smart and we think we're smart and we think we've figured it out, but really people like the ancient Greeks were smarter. They had to have been. To be able to think retroductively, you are able to decipher. I mean, really, you'd be able to decipher anything because you could come down to the simplest of reasons. That's awesome. Why don't we have that? Let's be simple, people. There's no reason we shouldn't be simple. There's no reason life isn't simple. It is simple. So we got to realize it, and we need to talk about it. And we all need to get to the retroductive school of thought. We all need to propel ourselves, and we all need to work towards thinking that way, and not thinking so inductively and deductively. Deductively especially, because that's where people are telling you, basically, you're just canceling out possibilities. It's the laziest form of thought. Don't do that. Do the simplest. Why even do the laziest? Because the simpler form is going to be easier than the laziest form. When you're just listening to everybody's opinion, you're not coming up with anything. He didn't find the needle in the haystack because someone was just like, yeah, I think I saw it over there. But the guy that burned it down, he found it a long time ago. He's already moved on with his day. So guys, I leave you today with this thinker episode, and I ask you again to just think about how it is you think. How do you think? Do you think retroductively? Do you think inductively or deductively? It doesn't matter which school of thought you think through or you think out of. But what matters is that you're using those thoughts wisely. And of course I do, I encourage people to think retroductively. I don't even always think retroductively. I need to make it a constant thing. I need to always be thinking along the lines of logic and common sense and simplicity. That's what life is. It's simple. It's not so complex, guys. So take this time today and just consider this. Think about it, and maybe tomorrow and the next day you'll realize that you can think about things in a much easier and a much more simplistic way. A way in which maybe doesn't anger people around you or offend those around you. And that's awesome. That's what we need, because that'll bring about a better future for all of us. So guys, with every revolution of the earth, let's keep this discussion going, because that's what Deeper Meaning Time is all about. Exploring the endless thoughts and curiosities we have every day, and discovering all the deeper meanings time has to offer. My name's Evan. Thanks for listening.